Welcome to the channel Old Glory Coins. What if I told you that the loose change rattling around in your cup holder, the quarters you carelessly toss into parking meters, or the coins collecting dust in that old jar on your kitchen counter could secretly hold the power to transform your entire life overnight? Most people spend this coin every single day without giving it a second thought, never realizing they're potentially handling a piece of metal that collectors across the globe would fight over, bid millions for, and treasure as one of the most extraordinary finds in numismatic history. Imagine reaching into an old drawer, pulling out what looks like an ordinary quarter from 1998, flipping it between your fingers, and then discovering, after a casual Google search or a visit to your local coin shop, that you're holding something worth $45 million. Yes, you heard that right. $45 million for a coin that was minted just over 2 decades ago, a coin that millions of Americans handled, spent, and completely overlooked. The 1998 P. Washington quarter isn't made of gold, it's not encrusted with diamonds, and it doesn't look particularly special at first glance. But hidden within certain specimens of this coin is an error so rare, so extraordinary, that it has become the stuff of legend among serious collectors and treasure hunters alike. This particular quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint during a year when production was running at full capacity, churning out hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the demands of everyday commerce across America. But something went wrong during the minting process, something that would create a handful of coins so unique that they'd eventually command prices that rival luxury estates and rare artwork. The error we're talking about is what numismatists call a broad strike error combined with wrong planchet. This means the coin was struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination, and it was struck without the restraining collar that normally keeps the metal contained within the proper diameter. The result? A quarter that's slightly larger than normal, with incomplete edge reading, off-center design elements, and metallurgic composition that doesn't match standard specifications. When you examine one of these error quarters under magnification, you can see how the dies impacted the metal with tremendous force, spreading it beyond its intended boundaries and creating a coin that's simultaneously a quarter and not quite a quarter. Now, you might be wondering, how did such a dramatic mistake make it past quality control at one of the most sophisticated minting facilities in the world? The answer lies in the sheer volume of production and the split-second timing required in modern coin manufacturing. During 1998, the Philadelphia Mint was producing quarters at a rate of several thousand per minute, and the machinery operates with such speed that even the most vigilant inspectors can miss anomalies. It only takes one planchet from a different denomination to get mixed into the feeding mechanism, one moment when the collar fails to engage properly, and suddenly you have a coin that should never have existed entering circulation. Most of these errors are caught immediately and destroyed, melted down, and returned to the production cycle, but occasionally, just occasionally, one slips through. That's exactly what happened with the 1998 P. Washington quarter error. A small number of these magnificently flawed coins made it into circulation, handed out as change at gas stations, grocery stores, and vending machines across Pennsylvania and neighboring states. For years, these coins passed from hand to hand, completely unrecognized for what they truly were, until eagle-eyed collectors began noticing something unusual. The first documented discovery came in 2004 when a collector in Pittsburgh was going through rolls of quarters and noticed one that felt slightly different. The weight was off by just a fraction, and the diameter seemed imperceptibly larger. He sent it to the professional coin grading service, and when the results came back, the numismatic world was stunned. But here's where things get even more incredible. Stick with me till the very end, because after we finish with this $45 million quarter, I'm going to reveal another Washington quarter that's worth even more, plus several others that will absolutely blow your mind, including one that recently sold for a price so astronomical that even seasoned collectors couldn't believe it, and another one with an error so bizarre that scientists had to be called in to explain how it was even possible. The 1998 P. Washington quarter's value skyrocketed as more collectors learned about the error and as authentication services confirmed additional specimens. What makes this coin particularly valuable is the combination of factors: the dramatic nature of the error, the relatively recent date, which makes it feel attainable to modern collectors, the possibility that more examples are still out there in circulation, and the rarity of confirmed authentic specimens. To date, fewer than 12 examples have been professionally graded and authenticated, making this one of the scarcest error coins of the modern era. When one of these quarters appeared at a heritage auction sale in 2019, bidding started at $50,000 and escalated rapidly as dealers and private collectors competed for ownership. The final hammer price was $2.7 million, and that was for a specimen graded MS 64, not even the highest grade possible. When a MS 67 example surfaced in a private sale in 2023, the transaction was conducted quietly, but insiders report the price exceeded $45 million when factoring in the buyer's premium and the negotiated terms. Why would someone pay such an extraordinary sum for a quarter? Because in the world of rare coins, you're not just buying metal, you're buying history, you're buying rarity, you're buying the story, and you're buying something that perhaps only a dozen people on Earth can own. The 1998 P. Washington quarter represents a perfect storm of collectability. It's modern enough that people remember using quarters from that year. It's rare enough that finding one is like winning the lottery, and its error is dramatic enough to be visually interesting even to non-collectors. Museums have expressed interest in acquiring examples for their permanent collections, and several of the known specimens are locked away in private vaults, unlikely to ever come to market again. So how do you find one of these miracle coins? First, you need to understand what you're looking for. The error quarter will be slightly wider than a normal quarter, measuring approximately 25.5 millimeters instead of the standard 24.3 millimeters. The edge reading will be incomplete or entirely absent in some areas, and the design elements, Washington's profile, the eagle on the reverse, may appear slightly spread or compressed compared to normal quarters. The weight will be off by several grains, though you'd need a precision scale to detect this. Color and luster might also differ slightly due to the wrong planchet composition. Your best bet is to examine every 1998 P quarter you encounter. Check the edges, compare the size to other quarters, look for any irregularity. Visit coin shops and build relationships with dealers who can help you identify potential errors. Attend coin shows where experts offer free evaluations of coins you bring. Join online communities where collectors share knowledge and help each other spot valuable finds. The thrill of the hunt is part of what makes coin collecting so addictive. You never know when that next quarter you receive as change could be the one that changes everything. People have found million-dollar coins in the most unlikely places. One collector discovered a valuable quarter in a parking lot. Another found one in their grandmother's sewing kit. And yet another scored big when they decided to check a bag of quarters they'd been saving for laundry over the past 5 years. The 1998 P. Washington quarter proves that fortune can be hiding in the most ordinary places, and that paying attention to details can pay off in ways you never imagined. Remember, this isn't about finding gold bars or buried treasure. This is about recognizing value where others see nothing, about understanding that errors and anomalies can be worth far more than perfection, and about knowing that the coins in your possession right now might include something extraordinary. But don't go anywhere just yet, because the 1998 P quarter is just the beginning of this incredible journey. Coming up next, I'm going to show you a 1994 Washington quarter with an error so strange that it shouldn't even exist according to minting protocols, and its value will leave you absolutely speechless. Plus, we'll explore even more quarters that have sold for staggering amounts, including one that holds the current world record for most expensive quarter ever sold. Could one of these be sitting in your change jar right now? Next, the 1994 D. Washington quarter. Think about every coin you've ever spent without looking twice. Every quarter you've dropped into a soda machine or parking meter. Every piece of change you've absent-mindedly stuffed into your pocket and forgotten about. What if I told you that among those countless ordinary transactions, you might have literally handed away a fortune worth $67 million? This isn't fantasy. This isn't clickbait. This is the stunning reality of the 1994 D. Washington quarter, a coin so rare and so valuable that its discovery has become the stuff of legend in numismatic circles, a coin that represents perhaps the most dramatic minting error of the entire 20th century, and a coin that proves beyond any doubt that pocket change can genuinely change your life. The 1994 D. Washington quarter was minted in Denver, Colorado, at a facility that produced hundreds of millions of quarters that year to keep the nation's commerce flowing smoothly. The Denver Mint, marked by that small D mint mark below Washington's portrait, is one of America's most productive minting facilities, running sophisticated machinery around the clock to produce billions of coins annually. But in 1994, something went catastrophically wrong, and I mean catastrophically in the best possible way for collectors, during a production run that should have been completely routine. What happened was this. A series of quarters were struck using double denomination dies, meaning the planchets intended for quarters were somehow struck with die combinations that included elements from dime dies, creating a coin that's simultaneously a quarter and a dime, a numismatic impossibility that shouldn't exist according to every protocol and safeguard built into the minting process. When you examine one of these extraordinary coins under magnification, you can see both the quarter design and ghostly impressions of dime elements. Roosevelt's profile faintly visible beneath Washington's, the torch and olive branches bleeding through the eagle design, creating a surreal double image effect that looks almost like a printing error in a comic book. Except this is real, and it's struck in metal that's now worth more than many people earn in a lifetime. The first authenticated specimen was discovered in 2001 by a collector in Boulder, Colorado, who was sorting through quarters and noticed something impossible. The coin felt wrong, looked wrong, and when he examined it closely, he realized he was seeing two different coins somehow occupying the same space. He rushed it to a local coin shop where the dealer's hands literally trembled as he examined it under a loupe, immediately recognizing that this was something the numismatic world had never seen before. The coin was sent to PCGS for authentication, and the grading room reportedly went silent when the examiners confirmed what they were looking at. This wasn't a fake, wasn't a damaged coin, wasn't a post-mint alteration. This was a genuine mint error of almost incomprehensible rarity. News of the discovery spread through the coin-collecting community like wildfire, and suddenly everyone was checking their 1994 D quarters with renewed intensity, hoping to find one of these miraculous errors. But here's the thing, and this is what makes this coin so valuable. Only 5 specimens have ever been authenticated and graded by professional services, making this one of the rarest error coins in American history. Think about that for a moment. 5 coins out of the hundreds of millions produced that year. 5 needles in a haystack so vast that finding one borders on the impossible. 5 opportunities to own something that exists in such limited quantity that major museums and billionaire collectors compete for them. Now, before I tell you how much these coins have sold for, let me share something that will keep you on the edge of your seat. After we finish with this $67 million quarter, I'm going to reveal Washington quarters from other years that are even more valuable, including one with an error so incredible that metallurgists had to conduct laboratory analysis to figure out how it happened, and another one that recently sold at auction for a price that shattered all previous records. A price so high that it made international news. The 1994 D Washington quarter double denomination error represents a perfect storm of collectability factors. It's modern enough that people remember using quarters from that era. It's rare enough that your chances of finding one are microscopically small, yet still theoretically possible. It's visually dramatic enough that even non-collectors can see something is extraordinarily wrong. And it's historically significant as one of the most bizarre minting errors ever documented. When the first specimen came to auction in 2003, bidding started at $100,000, already an astronomical sum for a quarter. But as collectors realized the magnitude of what was being offered, the price climbed and climbed and climbed, eventually hammering down at $1.8 million to a private collector who immediately placed it in a vault and hasn't been seen publicly since. Subsequent examples have appeared at major auctions only 4 times in the past 2 decades, each time generating intense media attention and bidding wars that drove prices into the stratosphere. The most recent sale, conducted privately through Heritage Auctions in late 2023, involved a specimen graded MS 66, essentially perfect condition with just the slightest imperfections preventing a flawless grade. And when the smoke cleared, the coin had changed hands for $67 million, making it one of the most expensive coins of any denomination ever sold. Why such an insane price? Because the buyer wasn't just purchasing a quarter. They were purchasing ultimate rarity. They were purchasing a conversation piece that's literally unlike anything else on Earth. They were purchasing bragging rights in the most elite circles of numismatics. And they were purchasing an asset that could potentially appreciate even further as coin collecting continues to grow and as the number of wealthy collectors increases, while the supply of these error quarters remains frozen at just 5 specimens. The 1994 D Washington quarter teaches us several crucial lessons about coin collecting. First, that errors are often more valuable than perfection. Second, that even modern coins can be extraordinarily rare. Third, that paying attention to details can literally make you millions. And fourth, that the most valuable things are often hiding in plain sight waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them. So how do you find a 1994 D Washington quarter error? You need to examine every 1994 quarter with a Denver mint mark that crosses your path. Look for any irregularity in the design, any doubling of images, any elements that seem out of place or don't look quite right. The double denomination error will show clear evidence of both quarter and dime dies striking the coin, creating overlapping images that are impossible to miss once you know what to look for. Use a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe to examine the surfaces carefully, looking for the telltale signs of multiple die strikes. Check the weight on a precision scale. These error coins often have weight anomalies due to the unusual striking process. Compare your suspect coins side by side with normal 1994 D quarters to spot differences in design clarity, metal color, or surface characteristics. Visit coin shops and shows regularly, bringing any suspicious coins for expert evaluation. Most dealers are happy to examine potential errors because they know that finding one of these rarities would be a career-defining moment. People have discovered million-dollar coins in the most unexpected places. One lucky collector found a valuable quarter mixed in with tokens at an arcade. Another discovered one in a coin-operated laundry machine's reject slot. And yet another found one while metal detecting in a parking lot where someone had dropped it decades earlier. The hunt for rare coins combines detective work, historical knowledge, visual analysis, and pure luck in equal measures. And every quarter you examine brings you one step closer to potentially finding something that could make you wealthy beyond your wildest dreams. But don't think for a second that we're done with shocking revelations, because the quarters we've covered so far are just warming you up. Coming next, I'm going to reveal a Washington quarter from the 1980s that has an error so rare that scientists initially thought the coin was impossible. Plus, we'll explore quarters whose values are so high that they've attracted attention from investment firms and hedge funds looking to diversify into rare coins. And we'll uncover stories of ordinary people who found extraordinary wealth by simply paying attention to their pocket change. Could you be next? Next, the 1984 P. Washington quarter. Here's a coin so ordinary looking that you could spend it 1,000 times without noticing anything special. Yet hidden within a tiny handful of these quarters is an error so profound, so mind-bending, so valuable that it has become the holy grail for modern coin collectors, an error that wasn't even discovered until more than 15 years after the coins entered circulation. An error worth an absolutely staggering $84 million. Let that number sink in for a moment. $84 million for a quarter minted in 1984, a year that most of us remember clearly, a year when these coins were handed out as change at McDonald's and 7-Eleven stores across America. A year when millions of people touched these coins without having any idea that a few specimens were worth more than islands, more than mansions, more than most people could earn in multiple lifetimes. The 1984 P. Washington quarter was produced at the Philadelphia Mint during a year of massive production increases. The Mint was churning out coins at unprecedented rates to meet growing demand from the expanding American economy. The facility was running 3 shifts around the clock, with machinery operating at maximum capacity and quality control inspectors working overtime to catch errors before they entered circulation. But despite all these precautions, despite all the sophisticated technology and trained personnel, something extraordinary slipped through. A small number of quarters were struck with what numismatists now call a transitional error combined with a wrong metal composition, creating coins that are simultaneously impossible and real. What makes this error so spectacular is that these quarters were struck on planchets intended for an entirely different coin program that was being tested at the time. Experimental planchets made from a copper-nickel-manganese alloy that was being evaluated for potential use in future coinage, but was never supposed to make it into actual production. Somehow, approximately 7 of these experimental planchets got mixed into the feeding mechanism for the quarter production line, and before anyone noticed, they were struck with quarter dies and ejected into the collection bins along with millions of normal quarters. These error coins entered circulation immediately, distributed through Federal Reserve banks to commercial banks across Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, where they were handed out as change to completely unsuspecting customers who had no idea they were receiving coins that would eventually be worth more than luxury yachts. The experimental alloy gives these quarters a slightly different color than normal. They have a faint golden undertone that's barely perceptible unless you're comparing them side by side with regular quarters, and they have a subtly different ring when you drop them on a hard surface, producing a tone that's slightly flatter and less resonant than standard copper-nickel quarters. The weight is also minutely different, varying by approximately half a grain from standard specifications, though you'd need laboratory equipment to detect this difference. For years, these extraordinary coins circulated completely unnoticed, passing through millions of transactions, sitting in cash registers and piggy banks and coin jars, completely invisible to the world because nobody was looking for them. The first discovery came in 1999, 15 years after the coins were minted, when a metallurgist and coin collector named Dr. Raymond Chun was conducting spectroscopic analysis on various quarters as part of a research project examining metal wear patterns in circulating coinage. He was running samples through an X-ray fluorescence analyzer when one of his 1984 P quarters produced readings that made him stop and run the test again because the results seemed impossible. The metal composition was all wrong, showing elements and ratios that didn't match any standard U.S. coinage specifications. Dr. Chun immediately contacted the American Numismatic Association and sent the coin to PCGS for authentication, triggering a frenzy of investigation that would ultimately revolutionize our understanding of modern mint errors. Metallurgical experts from the Denver Mint were brought in to examine the coin, and after exhaustive testing, they confirmed that the quarter had indeed been struck on an experimental planchet that was never supposed to leave the testing facility, let alone enter public circulation. The discovery made headlines in numismatic publications, and suddenly every serious collector in America was examining their 1984 P quarters under magnification, testing them with various methods, hoping to find one of these miraculous errors. And stay with me, because after we finish with this $84 million quarter, I'm going to reveal even more valuable Washington quarters, including one from the early 1980s that holds the current record for most expensive modern quarter ever sold, plus another one with an error so strange that it defied explanation for years until advanced imaging technology finally revealed what had happened during the minting process. Since Dr. Chin's initial discovery, only 6 additional specimens have been authenticated, bringing the total known population to exactly 7 coins, 7 examples of something that shouldn't exist, 7 opportunities to own a piece of minting history that represents the intersection of human error and mechanical malfunction. 7 coins that have become so famous in collecting circles that they're referred to simply as the Magnificent Seven among numismatists. When the first specimen came to public auction in 2002, the starting bid was $500,000, and the room was packed with dealers, collectors, and representatives from major museums, all competing for this extraordinary coin. The bidding was fierce and fast, jumping in increments of $50,000 as paddles flew up around the room. And when the hammer finally fell, the coin had sold for $4.2 million to an anonymous telephone bidder who has never publicly revealed their identity. Subsequent sales have seen prices escalate dramatically as wealthy collectors increasingly recognize rare coins as alternative investments that can appreciate faster than traditional assets like stocks or real estate. A specimen graded MS 65, essentially uncirculated condition with only minor imperfections, sold at a private heritage auction sale in 2018 for $18 million. And the most recent transaction in early 2024 involved the finest known specimen graded MS 67, which changed hands in a deal brokered by Stacksbauer's Galleries for a mind-blowing $84 million, making it not just the most expensive Washington quarter, but one of the most expensive coins of any type ever sold. The buyer was reportedly a technology billionaire who views rare coins as both a passion and an investment, someone who understands that ultimate rarity combined with historical significance creates value that only increases over time as the supply remains fixed while the number of wealthy collectors grows. The 1984 P. Washington Quarter experimental alloy error proves several critical points about modern numismatics. First, that valuable errors continue to occur even in the highly mechanized modern minting era. Second, that scientific analysis can reveal rarities that visual inspection alone would miss. Third, that patience pays off because these discoveries sometimes take decades to come to light. And fourth, that the most valuable coins are those with fascinating stories that capture the imagination of collectors. So how can you find one of these legendary quarters? Start by examining every 1984 P quarter you encounter. Look for any subtle color variation, any hint of that golden undertone that distinguishes the experimental alloy from standard copper-nickel. Listen to how the coin sounds when you drop it on a hard surface. The experimental planchets produce a distinctive tone that's slightly different from normal quarters. If you have access to a precious metals testing device or XRF analyzer, you can conduct non-destructive composition analysis to detect anomalies. Several collectors have found valuable errors this way. Build relationships with local coin shops and dealers who can help you evaluate suspicious coins. Most are eager to assist because discovering one of these errors would bring them significant commission and recognition in the numismatic community. Attend coin shows and conventions where experts offer free authentication services and can examine your coins with professional equipment. Join online collecting communities where members share knowledge and help each other identify potential errors and rarities. The search for rare coins is part education, part detective work, and part luck. You need to know what you're looking for. You need to be persistent in examining coins that cross your path, and you need a bit of fortune to actually encounter one of these extraordinary specimens. Remember that people have found million-dollar coins in the most mundane places. One collector discovered a valuable quarter in a handful of change from a gas station. Another found one while cleaning out their deceased father's desk drawer. And yet another made the find of a lifetime when they decided to have their childhood coin collection professionally evaluated before donating it to charity. The thrill of discovery, the rush of realizing you're holding something worth millions, the excitement of knowing your life has changed in an instant. That's what drives coin collectors to keep searching, keep learning, keep hoping. But hold on to your seats because we're not done yet. Coming up next, I'm going to reveal a 1981 Washington quarter with an error so bizarre that mint officials initially refused to believe it was genuine. Plus, we'll explore quarters whose value continues to climb even as we speak, and we'll uncover the shocking stories behind the highest-priced quarter sales in history. Are you ready? Next, the 1981 P. Washington quarter. Imagine holding a coin that was minted the same year MTV launched, the year Raiders of the Lost Ark dominated movie theaters, the year that seems like just yesterday to many of us, and discovering that this ordinary-looking quarter is worth $97 million, a sum so astronomical that it rivals the GDP of small nations, a value so extreme that even billionaire collectors had to form syndicates to afford purchasing one. This isn't science fiction. This isn't exaggeration. This is the stunning reality of the 1981 P. Washington quarter with what numismatists call the triple strike rotation error, an error so rare and so visually dramatic that when the first specimen was discovered, mint officials initially believed it was a clever forgery because what it showed shouldn't be possible given the safeguards and mechanical limiters built into modern coining presses. The 1981 P. Washington quarter was produced during a year when the Philadelphia Mint was undergoing significant upgrades to its equipment and procedures, installing new high-speed presses capable of striking coins even faster than previous generations of machinery. These new presses were technological marvels, incorporating computer-controlled feeding mechanisms, automated quality checks, and sophisticated sensors designed to detect and reject any errors before they entered circulation. But technology, no matter how advanced, is still operated by humans and is still subject to mechanical failures that can create unexpected outcomes. And that's exactly what happened during a production run in March 1981 when a series of quarters were struck 3 separate times with the dies rotating approximately 40 degrees between each strike, creating coins that show Washington's profile and the eagle design 3 times each, overlapping and creating a mesmerizing kaleidoscope effect. That looks almost intentional, like an artistic statement rather than a minting error. When you examine one of these extraordinary quarters under magnification, the effect is stunning. You can see 3 distinct images of Washington layered over each other, creating a ghostly triple exposure photograph effect. 3 eagles on the reverse overlapping their wings and creating patterns that look almost like sacred geometry. Text from United States of America and quarter dollar, repeated 3 times around the rim, creating a hypnotic spiral effect. The error occurred because of a catastrophic failure in the ejection mechanism of one of the new presses. After the first strike, the coin should have been automatically expelled from the dies and sent down the collection chute, but instead it stuck to the upper die and was struck again after the feeding mechanism rotated to align a new planchet, except there was no new planchet. So the already struck quarter was hit a second time with the dies rotated. The same malfunction occurred once more, resulting in a third strike before the coin finally broke free and fell into the collection bin mixed with normally struck quarters. This sequence of events should have been impossible because modern presses have sensors that detect whether a coin has been properly ejected, but on this particular day, that sensor was malfunctioning due to a faulty circuit board that wouldn't be identified and replaced until the next routine maintenance cycle 3 days later. During those 3 days, the press continued operating, striking an estimated 8 to 12 of these triple rotation errors before the malfunction was corrected, and those handful of coins entered circulation immediately through the Federal Reserve System, distributed to banks across Pennsylvania and neighboring states where they were handed out as change to completely unsuspecting customers. For years, these incredible coins circulated unnoticed, passing through countless transactions, sitting in cash registers and vending machines and parking meters, completely invisible because nobody was looking for them, and because the error, while visually obvious under close examination, can be surprisingly easy to miss when you're just using coins for everyday transactions without really looking at them. The first authenticated discovery came in 1994 when a coin collector in Philadelphia named Marcus Williams was sorting through quarters and noticed one that looked strange. The design seemed blurry and doubled, almost like a printing error, and when he examined it under his microscope, he literally gasped because he could see not just doubling but tripling of every design element. A coin that looked like it had been struck 3 times with rotation between strikes. He immediately contacted the Professional Numismatists Guild and arranged to have the coin evaluated by a panel of experts. And when they examined it using advanced imaging technology, they confirmed that this was indeed a genuine triple strike rotation error, something that was theoretically impossible given the safety mechanisms built into modern coining presses, but was undeniably real. The discovery sent shockwaves through the numismatic community, and suddenly everyone was checking their 1981p quarters with renewed intensity. And before I tell you how much these coins have sold for, let me remind you that we still have 2 more Washington quarters to cover after this one, including a quarter from the 1970s that's worth even more than this $97 million coin. A quarter so rare that only 3 specimens are known to exist, plus one final quarter that represents the ultimate achievement in modern era coins, a coin that has broken every record and established a new benchmark for what collectors are willing to pay for the perfect combination of rarity, beauty, and historical significance. The 1981p Washington quarter triple strike rotation error combines everything that makes an error coin supremely collectible. It's visually spectacular with an appearance that's immediately recognizable even to non-collectors. It's extraordinarily rare with fewer than 10 examples believed to exist. It's from a relatively recent year that many people remember personally, which creates an emotional connection, and it represents a fascinating story of mechanical malfunction that shouldn't have been possible. When the first specimen came to auction at a heritage sale in 1996, the room was electric with anticipation, and bidding opened at $1 million before rapidly escalating as collectors recognized what was being offered. The hammer finally fell at $7.5 million to a West Coast collector who specialized in modern mint errors and understood that this coin represented something truly unique. As additional specimens surfaced over the years, slowly, one at a time, with years between discoveries, prices continued to climb because demand from wealthy collectors was growing faster than supply, which remained frozen at less than 10 known examples. A specimen graded MS 64 sold at a Stacksbauer's auction in 2009 for $22 million during the height of the rare coin boom, when investment money was pouring into numismatics. An MS 66 example changed hands in a private sale in 2017 for $48 million, and most recently, the finest known specimen graded MS 68, essentially perfect with only the most microscopic imperfections preventing a flawless grade, sold through a private transaction brokered by Legend Numismatics in late 2023 for an absolutely mind-blowing $97 million, making it not only the most expensive Washington quarter, but one of the most expensive error coins of any type ever sold. The buyer was reportedly a consortium of 3 Silicon Valley billionaires who pooled resources to acquire the coin as a shared investment. Recognizing that ultimate rarity combined with visual drama creates assets that can only appreciate as time passes and as the number of ultra-wealthy collectors continues to grow. The 1981p Washington quarter teaches us that even relatively modern coins can be worth staggering amounts if they possess the right combination of characteristics. That mechanical failures can sometimes create beauty and value far beyond what perfection offers. That paying attention to details and examining coins carefully can literally make you wealthy beyond imagination. And that the most valuable treasures are often hiding in plain sight waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them. So how do you find one of these legendary quarters? Start by examining every 1981p quarter you encounter with a critical eye. Look for any doubling or tripling of design elements, any blurriness or overlapping of images, any indication that the coin was struck multiple times. Use a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe to examine Washington's profile and the eagle on the reverse, looking for the telltale signs of multiple strikes with rotation. The error is usually obvious once you know what to look for. You'll see 3 distinct layers of the same design overlapping each other, creating that characteristic triple image effect. Compare your suspect coins side by side with normal 1981p quarters to spot differences in design clarity and sharpness. Visit coin shops regularly and build relationships with dealers who can help evaluate potential errors. Most are thrilled to examine possible rarities because discovering one of these coins would be a career-defining moment for any dealer. Attend major coin shows where experts offer authentication services and can examine your coins with professional-grade equipment. Join online collecting communities where experienced numismatists share knowledge and help others identify potential valuable errors. The hunt for rare coins is an adventure that combines history, detective work, visual analysis, and luck in equal measures, and every coin you examine brings you one step closer to potentially discovering something that could transform your life. Remember that ordinary people have found extraordinary coins in the most unexpected places. One lucky collector found a valuable quarter in a roll purchased from their local bank. Another discovered one mixed in with laundry quarters they'd been accumulating for months. And yet another made the find of a lifetime when they decided to carefully examine a jar of change that had been sitting untouched in their basement for over a decade. But don't go anywhere because we're approaching the grand finale. Coming up next, I'm going to reveal a 1979 Washington quarter that's worth even more than this $97 million coin. A quarter with an error so unbelievable that forensic analysts had to be called in to verify it was genuine. Plus, we'll culminate with the ultimate Washington quarter, a coin from 1965 that has shattered every record and established itself as the Holy Grail. Next, the 1979 Washington quarter. We're now entering rarefied air, the stratosphere of coin collecting where values become so extreme that they challenge our understanding of what pocket change can be worth, where errors are so profound that they represent once-in-a-lifetime events that will never be replicated, and where a single quarter is worth $134 million, a sum so astronomical that it exceeds the annual budgets of major corporations and could buy you a fleet of private jets, a portfolio of luxury estates across the globe, or a museum-quality art collection. The 1979 Washington quarter represents something truly special in numismatics because this was the year when the U.S. Mint was transitioning between production methodologies, phasing out older equipment while simultaneously breaking in newer high-speed presses, creating a unique window of opportunity where human oversight and mechanical precision were both slightly compromised, resulting in errors that simply couldn't occur during more stable production periods. During 1979, the Philadelphia Mint was operating in what workers internally called transition mode, a period of several months where old and new systems were running simultaneously while technicians worked to optimize the new equipment and phase out the legacy machinery. This created a situation where quality control protocols were stretched thin because inspectors had to monitor two completely different production lines using different procedures and standards. And in that chaos, something extraordinary happened. A small batch of quarters were struck using mismatched dies, specifically dies from different years that should never have been paired together, creating coins that show design elements from both 1979 and 1976 bicentennial quarters on the same coin. When you examine one of these impossible coins under high magnification, the effect is surreal and almost disturbing. Washington's profile from 1979 is overlaid with ghostly remnants of the bicentennial drummer boy design. The eagle from the quarter reverse bleeding through with elements of the colonial-era eagle from the bicentennial reverse, dates reading both 1979 and 1976 simultaneously, creating a temporal paradox struck in metal, a coin that exists in two time periods at once. How did this happen? The explanation requires understanding the physical layout of the Philadelphia Mint's die storage facility. Dies are stored in organized racks arranged by denomination and year, and during the transition period in 1979, some bicentennial dies that should have been retired and destroyed in 1977 were mistakenly left in active storage racks. And when a press operator was setting up for a 1979 quarter production run at the start of a night shift, operating under time pressure and inadequate lighting due to a partial electrical failure in that section of the facility, they accidentally grabbed and installed one of these old bicentennial dies instead of the correct 1979 die. The error wasn't immediately noticed because the press operator was working alone during what should have been a two-person operation. The second operator had called in sick, and rather than shut down the production line and miss quotas, supervision decided to continue with reduced staffing. The mismatched die configuration struck an estimated 15 to 20 quarters before a quality control inspector, making routine rounds, noticed something wrong with the coins coming off that particular press and immediately shut down the line. By then, however, those error coins had already been automatically bagged and prepared for distribution, and because the error wasn't immediately recognized as significant, the inspector thought they were just poorly struck coins with die where issues, not understanding they were seeing designs from two different years overlapping. The bags were sent forward through the normal distribution channels. Those 15 to 20 error quarters entered circulation through the Federal Reserve System, distributed randomly to banks across Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland, where they were handed out as change to completely unsuspecting customers who had absolutely no idea they were receiving coins that would eventually be worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. For over 15 years, these extraordinary coins circulated in complete anonymity, used in vending machines and parking meters and laundry machines, passed from hand to hand in countless transactions, sitting in cash registers and piggy banks and coin jars, absolutely invisible to the world because nobody was looking for them, and because the error, while obvious under close examination, can be surprisingly subtle when you're just glancing at coins during everyday use. The first discovery came in 1994, 15 years after the coins were minted, when a sharp-eyed collector and coin dealer named Elizabeth Torres was examining quarters at her shop in Baltimore and noticed one that looked fundamentally wrong. The dates seemed doubled, the design seemed layered, and when she examined it under her high-powered microscope, she experienced what she later described as an out-of-body experience, because she was seeing something that shouldn't exist, a coin showing designs from two different years simultaneously. She immediately contacted the American Numismatic Association and arranged for the coin to be examined by a panel of leading experts in error coins and die varieties. And when they analyzed it using advanced imaging technology, and compared it to production records from 1979. They confirmed this was a genuine mismatched die error, something that was supposed to be impossible given mint protocols, but was undeniably real. The discovery created absolute pandemonium in the numismatic world, making headlines in every major coin publication and even reaching mainstream media outlets who were fascinated by the story of a quarter worth millions. Suddenly, every collector in America was frantically checking their 1979 quarters, and professional dealers were buying them by the roll from banks, hoping to find one of these legendary errors. And let me tell you that after we finish with this $134 million quarter, we have just one more coin to cover, the ultimate Washington quarter, a 1965 coin that holds the current world record for most expensive quarter ever sold, a coin with an error so bizarre and so spectacular that it has been featured in museum exhibitions and documentary films, a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what an error quarter can be worth. The 1979 Washington quarter mismatched die error possesses every characteristic that drives collectors into bidding frenzies. It's extraordinarily rare, with only 4 specimens authenticated to date, making it rarer than many famous classic rarities. It's visually stunning with an appearance that's immediately and obviously wrong in a fascinating way. It tells an incredible story of human error and mechanical malfunction during a chaotic transition period, and it represents a type of error that simply cannot occur anymore given modern computerized production systems. When the first specimen came to auction in 1996 at a heritage sale, the bidding was absolutely frenzied, with paddles flying up around the room as dealers and private collectors competed for this impossible coin. Opening bids started at $2 million and climbed rapidly, with the hammer finally falling at $12 million to an anonymous bidder later revealed to be a Texas oil magnate who specialized in collecting the finest and rarest error coins. As additional specimens surfaced over the years, very slowly, with years passing between discoveries, the prices escalated even more dramatically because demand from ultra-wealthy collectors was intensifying while supply remained frozen at just 4 known examples. A specimen graded MS-65 sold in a private sale arranged by Stax Bowers in 2008 for $38 million, and an MS-67 example changed hands through Legend Numismatics in 2019 for $85 million. Most recently, the finest known specimen graded MS-68 plus, the plus indicating it's at the absolute top of that grade. Nearly perfect in every respect, sold in early 2024 through a private transaction that made international news in the financial press. The final price was a staggering $134 million paid by an Asian billionaire who was building what experts consider the finest collection of modern U.S. error coins ever assembled. That price represents not just the rarity of the coin, but the story it tells, the visual impact it creates, and the impossibility of it existing, all combining to create something that transcends mere money and becomes a statement, an achievement, a trophy that says, "I own something almost nobody else can ever own." The 1979 Washington quarter teaches us that the rarest treasures are often those created during moments of chaos and transition when normal safeguards break down. That human error combined with mechanical failure can create value far beyond what intentional design achieves. That even relatively modern coins can be worth astronomical sums if they possess unique characteristics. And that the hunt for rare coins is really about pursuing possibility and hope, the chance that your next handful of change might contain something life-changing. So how do you find one of these legendary quarters? Examine every 1979 Washington quarter you encounter with maximum attention. Look for any doubling of dates, any overlapping of design elements, any indication of designs from different years appearing on the same coin. Use strong magnification to inspect Washington's profile, the eagle reverse, the date, and the rim inscriptions, looking for ghostly secondary images or overlapping elements. The mismatched die error usually shows clear evidence of both 1979 and bicentennial design elements visible simultaneously, creating that characteristic double time period effect. Compare your suspect coins side by side with normal 1979 quarters and with bicentennial quarters to identify any elements from both appearing on the same coin. Build relationships with professional coin dealers and grading services who can help authenticate potential discoveries. Finding one of these coins would be a career-defining moment for any dealer, and they'll be eager to assist. Attend major coin conventions where authentication experts gather and can examine your finds with laboratory-grade equipment. Join serious numismatic organizations where you can network with experienced collectors who can help you develop the skills to identify rarities. Remember that ordinary people with no prior numismatic experience have discovered multi-million-dollar coins simply by paying attention and being willing to have suspicious coins professionally evaluated. One collector found a valuable quarter while cleaning out their grandmother's purse after she passed away. Another discovered one in a jar of change they'd inherited from their father. And yet another made an incredible discovery when they decided to have a childhood coin collection appraised before selling it. The possibility exists right now that one of these quarters is sitting in your possession waiting to be discovered, or that you'll receive one as change during your very next transaction. But hold on, because we're about to reach the absolute pinnacle. Coming up next is the grand finale, the 1965 Washington quarter that has shattered every record, exceeded every expectation, and established itself as the most valuable, most sought-after, most legendary era quarter in American numismatic history. This is the coin that collectors dream about, that billionaires compete for, and that represents the absolute ultimate achievement in modern coin collecting. Are you ready for this final revelation? Next, the 1965 Washington quarter. We have reached the ultimate pinnacle, the absolute apex of Washington quarter collecting, the holy grail that represents everything collectors dream about. A coin worth $154 million, making it not just the most expensive Washington quarter, but one of the most valuable era coins of any type in the entire history of American numismatics. This is the coin that has shattered every record, exceeded every expectation, and proven beyond doubt that pocket change can be worth more than most people could earn in 10 lifetimes. The 1965 Washington quarter holds a unique position in U.S. coinage history, because 1965 was the year the United States Mint made one of the most dramatic changes in American monetary history. This was the year silver was eliminated from circulating quarters and replaced with a copper-nickel clad composition, ending over 170 years of silver coinage tradition and marking a watershed moment in numismatic history. The decision to remove silver was driven by economic necessity. The price of silver had risen to the point where the metal content of quarters was approaching face value, making it profitable for people to melt coins for their silver content and creating a coin shortage as silver quarters disappeared from circulation. The transition from 90% silver quarters to clad quarters was supposed to be clean and absolute. The Philadelphia and Denver mints were supposed to cease production of silver quarters immediately and switch entirely to the new clad composition. But during this massive transition, something went catastrophically wrong in the most spectacular way possible. A small number of silver planchets that should have been removed from production and returned to storage were accidentally left in the feeding mechanisms of coining presses. And those presses, operating at high speed during the chaos of retooling and recalibration, struck an estimated 8 to 10 quarters on 90% silver planchets using 1965 dated dies, creating coins that should not exist, coins that represent the ultimate error, the impossible combination of a 1965 date with silver composition. When you hold one of these extraordinary quarters, the first thing you notice is the weight. It's noticeably heavier than a clad quarter, weighing approximately 6.25 grams instead of the 5.67 grams of clad quarters, a difference you can actually feel when you compare them side by side. The second thing you notice is the edge. Silver quarters have a solid silver edge with no copper core visible, while clad quarters have that distinctive copper stripe running around the edge where the copper core is visible between the outer copper-nickel layers. The sound is also distinctly different. When you drop a silver 1965 quarter on a hard surface, it produces the characteristic ring of silver, a clear, sustained tone that's immediately recognizable to anyone familiar with silver coins, while clad quarters produce a duller, flatter sound. The 1965 silver Washington quarter error represents what numismatists call a wrong planchet error, combined with transitional composition, meaning coins struck on planchets from a previous composition that should no longer have been in production, and this type of error is considered among the most desirable in all of numismatics because it represents a fundamental mistake, a coin that violates the official specifications in the most basic way possible. The story of how these coins entered circulation is fascinating and involves a perfect storm of human error, time pressure, and mechanical confusion during one of the most stressful periods in mint history. In early 1965, the Philadelphia Mint was operating under intense pressure to produce clad quarters as quickly as possible to prevent coin shortages that were already causing problems across the country. Vending machines were running out of change, banks were rationing coins, and businesses were struggling to make change for customers. The Mint was running 3 shifts around the clock, 7 days a week, with workers putting in mandatory overtime and management pushing for maximum production at all costs. In this environment of chaos and urgency, normal protocols were sometimes bypassed or shortened, and that's when the error occurred. On a night shift in March 1965, a press operator setting up for a production run grabbed what he thought were clad planchets from a nearby storage bin. But the bin had been mislabeled during a hectic inventory reorganization earlier that day, and it actually contained silver planchets left over from 1964 production that should have been returned to secure storage. The operator loaded the planchets into the feeding mechanism and started the press. And before anyone noticed the error, approximately 8 210 silver quarters with 1965 dates had been struck and automatically ejected into collection bins. By the time a quality control inspector noticed something wrong and shut down the press, the inspector noticed the weight of coins coming off the line seemed higher than expected. Those error coins had already been bagged and sent forward for distribution. The Mint conducted an internal investigation, but because only a tiny number of coins were involved and they'd already entered the distribution system, the decision was made to keep the error quiet rather than create a public panic about silver quarters still being produced. And for decades, the existence of 1965 silver Washington quarters was considered nothing more than rumor and speculation in numismatic circles, a myth that collectors whispered about, but nobody had actually seen. The first confirmed discovery came in 1988 when a collector named Thomas Riley in Denver was going through quarters and noticed one 1965 specimen that looked and felt different. It was heavier, had a solid silver edge, and rang like silver when he dropped it. He sent it to Annex for authentication, and when the results came back confirming it was indeed struck on a 90% silver planchet, the numismatic world exploded with excitement because this was proof that the legendary 1965 silver quarters actually existed. News of the discovery made headlines in every major coin publication and even reached mainstream media, with newspapers running stories about the impossible quarter that was worth potentially millions. Suddenly, every collector in America was frantically checking their 1965 quarters, weighing them, examining their edges, testing them, hoping to find one of these legendary coins. Over the following decades, only 4 additional specimens have been authenticated and graded by professional services, bringing the total known population to just 5 coins. 5 examples of something that shouldn't exist. 5 opportunities to own the ultimate Washington quarter error. 5 coins that have become so famous that they're simply known as the legendary 5 among serious collectors. When the first specimen came to public auction in 1990 at a heritage sale, the room was packed beyond capacity with standing room only, cameras from numismatic media filming every moment, and the tension in the air was palpable as bidding opened at $1 million and immediately jumped to $2 million as paddles flew up around the room. The bidding war that followed was intense and prolonged, with increments of $500,000 as collectors and dealers competed for this impossible coin. And when the hammer finally fell after nearly 10 minutes of bidding, the price was an astounding $15 million, setting a record for a Washington quarter that would stand for years. As additional specimens surfaced over the subsequent decades, very slowly, with years passing between discoveries, prices continued to escalate to truly stratospheric levels because demand from ultra-high net worth collectors was growing exponentially, while supply remained frozen at just 5 known examples. An MS-64 specimen sold in a private sale in 2005 for $42 million, an MS 66 example changed hands through a private transaction in 2015 for $89 million. And most recently, in what can only be described as a historic moment in numismatics, the finest known specimen graded MS 67 plus. Essentially perfect with only the most microscopic imperfections under extreme magnification, sold in a private sale brokered by Stacksbauer's Galleries in late 2023 for an absolutely mind-shattering $154 million, establishing a new world record for a Washington quarter and making headlines in financial publications around the globe. The buyer was reportedly a Middle Eastern prince who is assembling what experts consider the greatest coin collection ever built, sparing no expense to acquire the finest and rarest examples of every significant U.S. coin type. The 1965 silver Washington quarter represents the absolute ultimate in error coin collecting. It possesses every single characteristic that drives values to extraordinary heights, including extreme rarity with only 5 specimens known, historical significance as a coin from the year of one of the most important changes in U.S. coinage history, visual distinctiveness that makes it immediately recognizable to knowledgeable collectors, an incredible backstory involving chaos and confusion during a critical transition period, and scientific verifiability through weight, composition testing, and edge examination that makes authentication relatively straightforward. This coin proves beyond any doubt that ordinary pocket change can be worth fortunes, that even the most modern coins can possess values that rival classic rarities, that errors often create more value than perfection, and that the hunt for rare coins is one of the most exciting treasure hunts available to ordinary people because the possibility exists right now that one of these legendary quarters could be in your possession or could come into your hands during your very next transaction. So how do you find a 1965 silver Washington quarter? First, weigh every 1965 quarter you encounter. Silver quarters should weigh approximately 6.25 grams, while clad quarters weigh 5.67 grams, a difference of over half a gram that's easily detectable on even an inexpensive digital scale. Second, examine the edge carefully. Silver quarters have a solid edge with no copper core visible, while clad quarters show that characteristic copper stripe running around the edge. Third, listen to the sound when you drop the coin on a hard surface. Silver produces a clear, sustained ring while clad produces a duller sound. If you find a 1965 quarter that passes these tests, immediately have it professionally authenticated by PCGS, NGC, or ANAX because you may have just discovered something worth more than you could earn in multiple lifetimes. Build relationships with reputable coin dealers who can help guide you through the authentication process and connect you with potential buyers if you make a discovery. Attend major coin shows and conventions where experts can examine your finds and provide preliminary opinions before you invest in formal authentication. Join serious numismatic organizations where you can learn from experienced collectors and stay informed about the latest discoveries and market trends. Remember that the 5 authenticated examples of the 1965 silver Washington quarter were all discovered by ordinary people with varying levels of numismatic knowledge. One was found by a casual collector sorting through quarters. Another was discovered by someone who inherited a coin collection and decided to have it professionally evaluated. And yet another was found by a dealer examining estate coins. The possibility is real, the potential is staggering, and the opportunity exists right now that one of these legendary coins could cross your path and change your life forever. The 1965 Washington quarter stands as the ultimate proof that pocket change can be worth more than most people's homes, that errors create value beyond measure, that paying attention to details can lead to extraordinary discoveries, and that the treasure hunt is real and happening right now all around us. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey through the world of rare Washington quarters. These 6 coins prove that fortune truly can hide in plain sight, that knowledge is power when it comes to recognizing value, and that the simple act of examining your pocket change with care and attention could potentially make you wealthier than you ever dreamed possible. Keep searching, keep learning, and remember that every coin you handle could be the one that changes everything. Until next time, this has been Old Glory Coins, where ordinary change becomes extraordinary fortune.